Hi guys and welcome to my channel. My name is Tina and my aim is to improve your drawings just like others have done for me when I just started out. In today's video we'll be covering a fox, which I think is a very beautiful animal. If you'd like me to draw something you would love to see, just put that in the comments below. Okay, let's get this one started. First I block in some of that black inside the ear and then I take some kind of orange-brown color to put down at the base. As always, I didn't include the background, but if that's something you would like to see, just let me know. I'm just laying down my first colors everywhere, getting that base color just right. In some areas I'm already putting some of the colors on top of each other to get just the right tone I'm looking for. I use a lot of this brown, it is just simply the perfect tone for this fox. Normally I use soft pastels for my underlayer, but this piece is a small size. It's only an A4, so it just makes sense to do this with the pencils immediately. Now I'll just use black to outline the ears. Follow the direction of the fur. After this I'll just smooth it out some by blending it a bit with my hand. Now it's time to put some fur inside the ear. I took an ochre color for this. Just take a good look at your reference picture and follow the direction of the fur. As you can see, it's going to overlap some, making it look realistic already. Next, I'm taking a brighter color to add some highlights on there. Go over the fur you've just drawn to put in those highlights. Next, I've switched to a dark brown to add some darker strands to create a little bit more depth. We keep building up this layer by layer, so I keep going lighter for my highlights and switch to white here. Then for the shadow parts I'll add a final layer with black. Note that how for your shadows you start with your lightest value and move to your darkest value, while the highlights are the other way around, from your darkest to your lightest. Moving over to the eyes, I'm using a reddish brown tone to put some color there. While I have this pencil in my hand, I'm going up and already add a few strands of fur. Now I'm filling the rest of the space around the eye up with a lighter color. I'm also putting some on the nose and using my finger to smooth this out. Even though this is just one color, you are still blending this out when you tap this with your finger. This gives it a smooth look and also pushes your pigment more into the paper, allowing for more layers. On the left I'm using a light gray as my base, but that is only because I'm going over this with this light orange-brown color. The gray underneath here helps darken this up while still keeping the orange tone. Next I'm using that yellow we've used before in the ear. It's important to switch up the length of your strokes as you follow the direction of the fur. Note that as your hair gets longer, there's naturally more curve to them. Then we're going to repeat this process, but with a dark brown. I'll show you how the reference picture looks like, and I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can clearly see the face. This fox has some black hairs in its fur without being too visible. After the black, I'll take the white to brighten it up again. Like every time you draw fur, it's all about building it up, so we keep building layer after layer. I'm using more of the darker reddish brown colors I could find for the small area immediately underneath the eye, and going in with a yellow pencil to give it that yellow tone it needs there. To bring back some colors on the left cheek, I'll use a combination of a light orange and that very muted yellow. And even though I think there's still more work, I'm starting on the eye first. As I've mentioned in other videos before, sometimes it's best to first start on other areas of your drawing. Having more colors on there makes it easier to see if you need to make some adjustments. Sometimes your values can be a little bit off, and by having more to compare it to, you can see where you need to go darker or lighter, for example. For the eye, I just start by outlining it with black. Next, fill it up with two browns and put a little bit of black on top. To brighten this up, I'm using a bright orange, but instead of putting a complete layer on, we're just going to dabble some on. I'll show you a close-up of the eye so you can see it has a grainy look. Just finish it up with a little bit of black before putting the pupil. On the pupil we add some white for the highlights. I love how with pastel you can add light colors on so easily. Also add just a little bit of green in the reflection. Seeing how the fox is in a forest, it makes sense that this green would be picked up by the eye. Now the eye is in place, I'm going to darken up the fur around it with a dark brown. We use a more yellow tone to start on the bridge of the nose. Use short strokes for this and blend it out a little bit with your fingers before going over this with a brighter color in the same color range. As I'm putting this on, I see that I want to darken that left side up just a little bit more. You don't want to use black because that would be too dark, so just use that dark brown again to add in a few hairs. And while I have this pencil in my hand, I use it to add some strands in the middle as well. It's all about building up that fur again, so now I take a more reddish tone to give it some more warmth. With this color I'll be adding lots of hairs since our fox is known for its red coat. Moving on to the muzzle, like we did on the left side, I am first putting in that light grey and just a little bit of that yellowish color at the top for a smooth transition from the red fur to the white creamy fur. Next I'll take my white pencil and at the edge between the red and the grey I'll start adding small white hairs. I'm also going up the bridge of the nose while adding these small hairs, and at the top of its head you can clearly see there are two lighter areas, so we're also adding some white hairs there. With the white we're also going to fill up the entire area of the muzzle. These are very short hairs as the muzzle of a fox is very small. And you'll also notice that on the left and right here I add more on top of each other to make it a more dense area. I still need to fill up the chin, so a combination of a grey with some light yellow is just fine. And while I have this one in my hand, I'm going over the muzzle with it. For the lips we just go over this with black and we'll put a small amount of tiny black hairs on the side. On the nose, the crease and the nostrils I'm making pitch black. While even though I fill up the nose in black, I'm using a more light touch to keep it a little bit lighter. Next I'll be adding some light grey that will form the highlights and just finish this up with blue to give it more color and depth. I'm going to skip through the right side since it's just a repeat of what we've seen already. Before I move on to the body of the fox, if you are like me and love to draw animals, sign up for my monthly newsletter. You'll find the link in the description and get 4 reference pictures just like these each month. For the body I start by first blocking in some base colors, and since it's a slightly larger area I'm going to use soft pastels for this. Now this isn't necessary, pencils will be just fine, but because I have them it's smart to switch. Even though soft pastels are slightly more expensive, they contain more pigment and they will last you longer than a pencil would. Back to the colors, I'll use a mix of reddish brown, varying in darkness, some black at the lower part and then a more yellow toned color at the left side. Next I'll blend everything out and I'll use my soft tool for this. Make sure you wait with your black until the last color to blend out, otherwise you'll smudge it into the other colors. For the chest I'll put on a light cream color and then blend this out. Because we had that dark grey underneath the chin, we have this nice color for the shadows. I'll start by adding the hairs at the edge first. For this I'll use a darker reddish brown. One of the biggest advantages of putting in your background in first is that afterwards you don't have to worry about putting in these hairs on top of it. Can you imagine doing this the other way around, trying to get that background in between the hairs? Doesn't sound so easy now, does it? Next up, I'll use a lighter color to start adding some hairs, and then I'll use a yellow toned color on top of this. Now the strands on the body are longer, so don't forget to draw them accordingly. After I've put in these ones, I'll go in with some more of a red tone. Just add these hairs in between and work your way up a little bit. I keep on building this fur layer by layer while switching up my colors. This way we're creating cohesive looking fur while at the same time still keeping it interesting by having all these minor color variations. We'll repeat this process on the section below, and starting on the lower part, I'll first put in these hairs where the lightest hairs will be. Next I'll switch to a brown reddish color and a lighter one to fill the parts in between with some hairs. And then I can take an even lighter yellow color to brighten it up even more. With the white we're going to cover those light areas all over the body. On the left side here I'm using that yellow to mute it back down afterwards. We'll repeat this a few times while changing up the colors we use to mute the white. Depending on where you're drawing, this could be a more yellow tone or even brown. At the top left side, I just used a brighter yellow for some highlights. Moving on to the chest area, there are a few patches that are a little darker, so I started by adding some dark brown. Now all you need to do is start by adding in the white hairs. Make sure you follow the general direction of the fur, getting those curves in will help establish a realistic feel. Next, take out a real dark brown and start adding in fur where you want your shadows to be. We're going to take a lighter color and repeat this, and then we'll even take a more yellow tone. When you're done, just go over this one more time with your white to create this beautiful creamy chest. The combination of different colors with the white on top of that creamy base layer will give you this warm, rich looking coat. To get a smooth transition from the light fur to the dark fur, I'll start by adding some reddish brown hairs at the lower part and keep moving down. Next, take a slightly lighter color and repeat this. I'll also use this same color on the left side and a little bit at the bottom on top of that dark area. Add that darker color above on top of this and blend this out some more. Next, I want to darken some areas up a little bit, so I'll just use that dark brown that I've used so many times on this fox already now. Now all that's left to do is brighten it up a little bit. First, I take this light yellow and add some small strokes. Where the black was, I'm even using light blue for some highlights. Just make sure to use a light hand and don't use too much. And for the final touch, just add in those whiskers. Don't think too much about it. You don't need the perfect lines to resemble those whiskers. Just draw a quick, light and loose line and this will be just fine. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate your support, as it helps to grow my channel and reach other people like yourself. Hope to see you again next Friday, and in the meantime, have a great week.